hit the Telegram for those of you who'd like to watch on Telegram. And we're going to get started right away because we have very important information to share as always. Here we go. So let me hit the record button. So as you know, there is a need to get better naturally. There's little things that we're doing. And so I want to encourage you to open your mind up. And what's the best way to open your mind? It's to dance. So fasten your seatbelt. It's time to learn to grow and grow together. Here we go. It's time to dance.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative and natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. If you're tuning in today, something has resonated from my blog where it said, you know, there's a trend, there's something that's happening, even with younger people. They're delaying giving different brands to bring down fever and different brands to get better over-the-counter stuff. People are asking for natural ways to return the body to health. How can I say that so that I'm not zinged or tagged or anything like that? Because we all know that the body was created to just thrive. And so today we're going to talk about the different ways that we can use herbs and natural remedies to reverse known viruses. So for those of you who are having symptoms for a long time, or maybe you want to prevent them, today is the class for you, because Denise Sammons, Dr. Denise Sammons, she's a naturopathic doctor in Tennessee. She's been working with natural remedies, herbs, to help her patients release dis-ease and embrace natural health. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. Denise Sammons is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Sammons, to the classroom.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Well, share a little bit about yourself and what led you to naturopathic medicine.
Well, I had a health challenge myself back in 2002, and I ended up having emergency surgery 2 weeks before I was to go out on a medical missions trip to Romania.
Oh, wow.
And I was told I would be in surgery for 30 minutes, and they were in there for 2.5 hours. And over the next 5 years, what they took out of my body actually came back, and I was told I was going to need a major surgery in 2007. So I went to a Total Health Conference in Chicago, and it was a faith-based conference. And that was where I first learned about functional medicine. And I heard functional medicine doctors speak, and that really resonated with me because I wanted to get, why is this happening in my body? And that's always been the question that I would ask my doctor when I would go, and they could never give me an answer. And so from that conference, my takeaway was alkalize your body. Disease cannot thrive in an alkaline environment, and your body will heal. And I had severe endometriosis. And I know now there are many factors in endometriosis, hormonal imbalances. But my takeaway from that conference was alkalize your body. And that's what I started doing. And I went on a very strict alkaline diet. And I was scheduled to have surgery. I mean, I was supposed to go back to my doctor and schedule major surgery. And when I went back a year later for a checkup, he said, "Where have you been?" And I said, "I don't need the surgery anymore." I said, "The pain's gone." I said, "I've been healed." And he said, "What did you do?" And I said, "I did an alkaline diet." He didn't know what that was. And I explained it. And his only comment to me was, "Well, that doesn't sound like much fun." That was his only comment. And then it was later in 2009, my father had his fourth heart attack. And so we had, for 3 prior heart attacks that he had, he was not expected to live through any of them. He actually had heart attacks every May 24th, starting in 1984, and then again in 1997, and then 99. And then he had a fourth heart attack in 2009. And it was at that time that I got a book by Stephen Sinatra, who I know has been on your show as well. And it was Reversing Heart Disease. And I started using that book to use alternative things to help my dad, because my dad said, "I'm not going to take pharmaceuticals." And it was a year later, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so at that time, I decided I was going to jump in with both feet, and I started going to integrative medical conferences to learn what you could do for Alzheimer's. And that was the turning point in my life, because that was 2010. And then 2012, in December of 2012, I opened my health practice. So that was what really, someone you love. And typically that's what I hear when I go to conferences. Either the doctor themselves had something that was not resolved by traditional medicine, or someone they love was facing a health crisis. And that was my turning point, was helping my dad.
And so how were you able to incorporate Alzheimer's to your treatment? Do you still work with people with Alzheimer's?
We still work with neurological disease. In fact, just recently had an ALS patient come to me. The last 10 years, it's been a learning process for me. Back then, my thought with my dad's Alzheimer's was he's not getting oxygen to the brain. And so what made sense to me, I was at an A4M conference, which is a huge conference down in Orlando, and, thousands of people, and I saw a hyperbaric oxygen chamber there. And so I thought, if I can get oxygen to my dad's brain, this is going to help him. And it was great. It worked. We did treatments every day for 18 months. And I also had him on some herbs like vinpocetine and huperzine and things that will open blood flow to the brain, ginkgo. He was still doing cardiovascular support with L-carnitine, D-ribose, and those things, and some L-arginine. So we've started the hyperbaric treatment, and my dad was a very intelligent man. He was a CPA, he was on our city council, brilliant man. And to talk to him, you would know he had it, but he'd gotten to the point that he couldn't pick up a letter and read it and comprehend it. And that was frustrating to my dad. So over a period of 3 months, and incorporating the hyperbarics and also the supplements that will open blood flow, my dad was able to return to being able to read.
Wow. So were you able to reverse the diagnosis, or did just slowly
symptoms
progress?
Right. Yeah. We reversed it, and the symptoms, did not progress. And so for 18 months, he stayed very level. And then it got to the point that he just didn't want to do the hyperbarics. He was just tired of doing it. We were doing it an hour every day. And I can say that my father did not pass away from Alzheimer's. He passed away with Alzheimer's, but he did not die. I mean, he had it for over 5.5 years. And when he passed away, we were still speaking to him. He could still talk to us. He could still feed himself. And he died because of a weak heart. And he fell and fractured his hip. Was put in the hospital, and they basically forced us to do a surgery that I didn't want to do. And then they dehydrated my father. They refused to give him fluids. And so that was a very, they wanted to get the surgery in and get the money, and then they refused to give my dad fluids afterwards. So that was a very, it was a very hard thing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. It never is a good thing to see your parents go through trials, or anybody for that matters. But to be able to know that you did everything you could in your power to help prolong his mental acuity, that his wellness, and that's well done.
And
Well
God,
done.
God used that to get me back to my passion of wanting to be a doctor, which I wanted my whole life. And so God used that to turn me back to what I've wanted to do, and that I look at it as a positive thing. I don't look at it as something negative, because he's brought me so many opportunities that would not have come otherwise. So
absolutely. It's a wonderful way. Rewriting the program, rewriting the story is so helpful for all of us to heal. And so it sounds like to me, and I always say this, usually people come to natural health because of a crisis where allopathic medicine has failed them and they had no other option, or someone that you love has gone through this. And so either way, it's so wonderful to learn from other people's life lessons, lessons that growth opportunities, and so that we don't have to go through it. And that's what I love about teachers like you that come in the classroom. We all learn. We don't have to go through it, because we all learn vicariously through you. So with that in mind, you've turned to herbs, natural health to for your patients. But in particular, we're going to be talking about viruses today. For those of you who have had a virus in the last, couple of years or so, what are some of the things that you have tried, Dr. Sammons, that perhaps maybe have helped other patients along the way?
Sure. So with the virus in question, the 2020 pathogen that we are all very familiar with, when we started treatment on that, first of all, it came out in the news that ivermectin was very effective. And so my thought immediately went, I know ivermectin is an antiparasitic, but it was also an anti-malarial drug as well. And God just brought to my mind very quickly about an herb called artemisinin. And this is a Nobel Prize winning herb. Okay. And that's what I tell people, because a lot of times people, natural gets a bad rap. They don't think it, but when you tell someone this won a Nobel Prize in medicine, what is more prestigious than the Nobel Prize in medicine? So in 2015, the discovery of this herb, and it is an anti-malarial, so it's a very, very, very strong herb. I just felt like this was going to be my natural ivermectin. And so when patients would come in, and we do bioenergetic assessments here, we use the Zyto technology. And when I would do the energetic assessments for products that we could test them for to see if this was going to work, the artemisinin always ranked very high. That was typically their highest need. And we began using that. The first thing that we did, of course, was to address fibrin that could get in the blood. And one of the things I want to tell, and I made this, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is my Pac-Man. Okay. And so my staff actually did that for me this morning. Proteolytic enzymes are so important in the body. And we've used those long before 2020. I mean, that's been very, very important in treating Lyme disease and breaking the cysts down and the biofilms that surround the Lyme bacteria. And it also is something that I've been doing personally for years, just because when you can keep the blood clean of fibrin, anytime you can reduce fibrin in the blood, you actually increase oxygen automatically at a cellular level. So that's very, very, very important, getting good oxygen to the cells. So I tell my patients when we start them on proteolytic enzymes, that is the Pac-Man. That's what's going to go in. That's going to clean up the blood. It's going to dissolve fibrin. It's going to dissolve non-living tissue in the blood. I'm going to have to take a drink here.
That's okay. That's okay. Now, fibrin.
Fibrin, yes.
Can you explain a little bit about fibrin?
Well, that's gonna be what creates clots, blood clots.
Okay.
And we know with the 2020 pathogen, that was a huge issue, and it still is even today with people who have taken the jab. We're seeing clotting issues like crazy, and I see it in my practice. I mean, I'm seeing the jab injury almost daily in my practice, and people recognize it. They know what's going on, and that's why they're here. But we have used proteolytic enzymes, otherwise known as fibrinolytics, to go in and clean up the blood. They're the Pac-Man. So some of my favorites, and we talked a little bit about yesterday. We can, if I'm able to see somebody in the office and I can energetically test them, it takes the guesswork out of everything. But I was seeing people from out of state over the phone. We were having people call from different states because they had seen me on another platform and heard me speak. And so if I didn't know that person and I could not test them energetically, I went with the strongest fibrinolytic that we have, which is lumbrokinase. That is the very strongest one.
How do you say that again?
Lumbrokinase. So
Lumbro?
LUMBROKINASE. And I typically, and I have a brand that I use in my practice, and I would typically dose people at 3 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach. And one thing that I would like to say, and I didn't say this in the beginning when we start, right now, I'm not trying to treat, cure, or diagnose anyone out here. And I want to make that clear. What I'm doing is I'm sharing testimonies and things that have worked in our practice. And I always recommend, if you hear me speak and I speak on another platform, I always say, consult your practitioner, talk to your practitioner before you move forward. But I'm making, I'm sharing testimonies today, basically, of things that have worked. The next one is nattokinase. That is also a very strong fibrinolytic. Another product that we used frequently was a product called Nutrizyme, which is a pancreatic enzyme blend with bromelain in it as well. And then we have serapeptase, and I know Nutrimetics, which is a sponsor. Which
yes, as a matter of fact, if there's any Nutrimetic products that you're interested, one of there are 2 things that we're doing for the M-Cube detox experience, which one of them is Commanda and the other one is Algus. This is for the mold and metal toxicity, and if you until tomorrow. So this is like right away. If you want to do this. You can go to nutrimetics.com, and the way you spell Nutrimetics is right there. You see right there, Nutrimetics, and Nutramedix. And if you enter Lilly, Lilly, you get 35% off whatever your order is until November 30th, which is tomorrow. So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. So Nutrimetics has a product called serapeptase, and that would honestly what I saw when I was working with the people that came in with the viral issues in 2020 and 2021, the things that tested the best for those people were the pancreatic enzymes with the bromelain mixed with it, and also the nattokinase and the lumbrokinase. Those tested well. Occasionally I would have people test for serrapeptase, but I would like to throw in a great testimony for serrapeptase. It cleans plaque out of the arteries. And I have a patient in Alaska who had had a heart cath before she came to me. And she did several months of serrapeptase. And at the end of the year, her doctor made her have another heart cath, and she had a 40% reduction in plaque.
Wow.
And she was not taking any pharmaceuticals. So that was very impressive. And I would like to throw that out there for someone that may be, struggling with some plaque buildup in their arteries. But so we give the proteolytic enzyme to clean up the fibrin in the blood. Then we look at antivirals. So again, the artemisinin is one of the.
Is this what you're saying? Because I'm taking this as well.
Yes, ma'am. It sure is. Yes.
I am taking this right now.
So,
because I woke up with pain on the upper left-hand quadrant of my belly button. And of course, Dr. Cowden immediately said, well, that is either your pancreas or your spleen. And so he had me, I think, which one does this one? Is that for the pancreas or the spleen?
Well, it's an antiparasitic.
Yeah. So he said that I had a parasite.
Oh, in the pancreas. Okay. Yes.
So he said that there are certain bugs that find themselves going to the pancreas and certain bugs that find themselves going to the spleen. I can't remember which one was the one that this was good for, but
well, we actually had a form of artemisinin called SOD, which is superoxide dismutase, and it has the curcumin built into it.
Oh, curcumin.
Yeah. And so I was using that. And the other things that I would use for antivirals was, again, noni, which is Nutramedix. And I don't know if that's got a.
There you go.
Yeah. And then chacuna. Okay. So when we could energetically test, again, it makes it very clear and easy to see what the body needs. So we would pair those. Sometimes I would pair them. I found noni worked better for people that had a lot of inflammation, and because it helps with pain. And chacuna, we can do that by itself. But we would use the artemisinin. And then if there were secondary infections like fungal infections and bacterial infections, one of the things that I saw a lot of times, doctor, if you go to a traditional doctor, they automatically think infection is bacterial, and they're going to throw an antibiotic at you. And that was what I saw a lot during 2020 and 2021. People would come in, they were so frustrated, they were going to their doctor, and they were either sent home with nothing to treat their viral illness, or they were sent home with an antibiotic, and they said, I'm not getting better. And I said, an antibiotic is not going to work on a virus. We've got to give you an antiviral. And so we would start them on these products, and they were seeing turnarounds many times 24 to 36 hours. We were seeing some remarkable turnarounds.
Wow.
Yeah, but a lot of times the infection in the lung, there would be a secondary infection, and it was fungal. And so what they tested for, again, a Nutramedix product, was barberry. Barberry is a great antifungal. It works really well. And I've used that a lot with asthmatic patients, because what I've found when someone has asthma is they are dealing with a fungal infection in the lungs. They've got the emotional side, the emotional trigger to asthma. And I'm sure you've gone through all of that on your show, and won't get into that. But
no. That's okay, because we are doing the private M-Cube detox experience. So any time that we could share live, that would be great. But I love what you're saying about asthma and mold and the lungs, fungus in the lungs of someone who's asthmatic, because I've noticed for me, ever since I started doing the M-Cube detox experience, that I'm not reacting as quickly.
Yes. And when you have, and the other thing, when there was a bacterial infection, we would use Tangarana. A lot of times people would test very well for that. And that's, I think Dr. Cowden calls that keep. He says it kills everything except people. So that is an antiparasitic, it's an antiviral, it's an antibacterial, it's an antifungal. But again, Zyto takes the guesswork out of what's going on in the body. Some of the other things that we would do that were very beneficial is nebulizing hydrogen peroxide. And so we would take a saline solution and do a 1 part 3% food grade hydrogen peroxide, and then 10 parts saline solution. And I would have people nebulize 3 to 5 milliliters of that 3 times a day. Or we would nebulize a silver hydrosol. The brand that I like particularly well is Argentin 23. And again, if they tested well for silver when we energetically tested them, I would have them, because again, that's antiviral, it's antifungal, it's antibacterial. When we know from Frank Schallenberger, years ago, posted a nebulized hydrogen peroxide therapy online because his wife was sick. And we know when something goes into the lungs, it will go systemically into the body. We also know with viruses, particularly, that they do not recover from oxidative stress. So anytime we can use an oxygen therapy on a virus, it's done, and that was the benefit of using high dose vitamin C, liposomal C, and over in the country where this virus originated, they were doing IV vitamin C at very high doses, and vitamin C turns to hydrogen peroxide in the blood. So that is one of the cheapest things. And I tell everyone, all our patients, get a nebulizer, buy the food grade hydrogen peroxide for $5 a bottle, put it in your refrigerator, and you have one of the world's best antivirals out there. If you can't get an herb, if you can't get to the doctor, use the hydrogen peroxide. The other thing that I did was I used a very high dose D3. And I'm talking a 50,000 unit capsule. Now, I bought a bunch of this up. I kept it in my practice just to give to my patients. And I remember at a conference, I was at a conference years ago here, and a German doctor, Dr. Klinghardt, was speaking, and he says, in his German accent, vitamin D in Germany, that's the holy grail of medicine. And we use very high doses. I was at an ACIM conference in Dallas several years ago, and I heard a doctor speak on using vitamin D for flu. And this was years before we had this epidemic that we just went through. But 50,000 units all in one big dose. Don't try to divide it up, but find a 50,000 unit capsule and do that for 3 consecutive days. That's awesome for flu, but it was amazing for this 2020 pathogen that we're speaking of. And we did zinc. Zinc, if it gets into the cell, you have the zinc ionophore, you want the quercetin to push the zinc into the cell. And that's where the artemisinin SOD came in, because it had the quercetin already there. And so it was the zinc ionophore to push the zinc into the cell. But then later on, Quicksilver Scientific developed a product that was a liposomal form of zinc with the quercetin, and also had propolis in there, which is great for the immune system. And so I love liposomes because they are so well absorbed by the body. And we lose most of what we take. We're only absorbing 30% of what we take in the gut. It gets lost. And so these liposomes are going to go intracellularly, and they do a much, much better job. We used N-acetylcysteine, NAC is what it's otherwise known as, NAC. We did 600 milligrams of that twice a day. And I like to pair my NAC with vitamin C. And I normally will double the dose. And with this virus, I would actually use 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C with a 600 milligram NAC. And we would do that twice a day. And the vitamin C tends to kind of mop up any free radicals, like cysteine radicals, that can come off of the NAC. One of the things that I would, frequently ask my patients is, what is your bowel function like? Because if they're sick and we're killing pathogens and they're not having good bowel movements, they're not detoxing, they're not getting things out of their body. So that was a common question. And if I had someone, and a lot of times that's why people are sick. So we would sometimes give them mag citrate to get their bowel function moving. If people were coming in with low oxygen, we were giving them L-arginine. That's another Nobel Prize winning supplement. It was an amino acid. It won the Nobel Prize. I'm trying to think, it was in 1998. Okay. And so that produces nitric oxide in the blood, and that helps with endothelial function. And we saw that very beneficial. There were several reports that came out. And I have testimonies of that in my practice. A guy came in and oxygen was low 90s. And we gave him a really, I think I gave him like 3 grams of L-arginine. I put him on the PEMF machine, put the big loop around his neck. And within less than 25 minutes, his oxygen was up in the upper 90s. And he actually did a testimony right then for me. It was amazing. So, and I was telling Dr. Cowden last night, we were speaking, I said, did you know that nitric oxide is also an antiparasitic? And he said, no, I hadn't heard that. And I said, I was just reading that. So that was interesting. But one of the things that I have seen with the treatment of this virus, a lot of doctors, and I'm so grateful for our medical community that stepped up and was using ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. But what happened a lot of times, we know that parasites are the largest pathogen, okay? And when we kill that parasite, there are oftentimes other smaller pathogens. There's bacteria, there's fungal infections, there's viral infections that can just dump out into the body.
Mhm.
And then the pathogen, the parasite will bind 7 to 8 times its body weight in heavy metal. I heard a doctor speaking on that one time. So when that parasite dies, that metal gets dumped into your body. Okay. And that is food for so many pathogens. As you know, fungal
Mhm.
infections love heavy metal, so do Lyme bacteria. But that can actually and then dumping all those other pathogens out into the blood can really suppress the immune system. And when we got, through, a lot of people were recovering somewhat from this viral illness, but they were getting the long hauler symptoms. They could not get over the hump.
Mhm.
And what I have found with that is doing that 5-day regimen of ivermectin or whatever antiparasitic they used actually just stirred up parasites, which almost everybody on the planet has parasites, and it's never addressed in traditional medicine ever, and or rarely, I should say. Um, but just that 5-day course just stirred up so much trouble. It didn't do enough to kill parasites, but it opened the
Poked 'em.
body.
Yeah.
It just dumps so many toxins out into the blood, and then it starts suppressing the immune system. And a
Mm.
lot of people that came here were given antibiotics by their doctor, which just flared these fungal infections. And now we have these raging fungal infections, and then we have these mycotoxins, which I know you're familiar with that. And that's that chemical that comes off of mold and fungi that is so suppressing to the immune system, and it's very toxic to the liver. And so we have, these high levels of mycotoxins, high levels of fungal infections. And so when we would have the long haulers come in and we would energetically test them, we were seeing that fungal load, and we were also seeing a high load of parasites. So we would start them on antifungals, we would start them on mycotoxin binders, and we would start them on a parasite protocol, but we pulse it. You can't just give antiparasitics. Like ivermectin is used a lot with our RA and fibromyalgia, but they do it every single day. And you have to pulse it. You have to cycle it and target the life cycle of the pathogen. And so I've mentored with Dr. Cowden for several years, and his pulsing cycle is what I use: 5 days on and then 2 days off, just like a work week is what we tell our patients. 5 days on, 2 days off. We cycle that 4 times, and then we go back and we do that 5-day cycle around the full moon, because that's when the pathogens come out. And I tell my patients, that's when they like to party. That's when they're going to replicate. That's when you're going to feel the worst, because that's what they're doing. And we will cycle that usually about 4 months, but sometimes we have to go longer, because I've had patients that have actually continued to dump worms every full moon cycle for up to 6 months.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, we've seen some really sick people. And so doing those antiparasitics and then doing metal binders. When we do an antiparasitic program, it's so important to give metal binders, because you're releasing so much metal toxicity back into the blood, and then using also the proteolytic enzymes, your Pac-Man, to clean up the blood, reduce the fibrin, so you're not cutting down the oxygen flow to the cells, you're not having a risk of blood clots. Those are some of the things that have worked really well. And then with the smells, a lot of people, they can't smell, or they have a weird smell, and they're like, I've had this weird smell going on. So what we just recently had the most wonderful testimony from a patient. I had heard Brian Artist speak on
Mhm.
using nicotine and how it cleans off the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the brain. And I shared this with this patient, and she bought some nicotine lozenges, 3 milligram, and she took one, and she sent me a message, and she said, I was at my granddaughter's house and she was baking pumpkin pie, and I was able to smell that for the first time.
Wow.
So that was just a very, very, and then she texted me again or messaged me again the next day. And she said, I baked bread in the oven. And she said, I was able to smell the bread. And she said, that horrible smell that I've had for months has just gone away. So that just, great, great testimonies of just simple things we can do.
How wonderful. I mean, there's so much information that you've given so far. I want to break it into little chunks because so you talked about fibrin, which is what creates the clots in the body, it's in the blood. But then you talked about lumbrokinase, nattokinase, and nutrisome, right?
Nutrizyme.
Nutrizyme. Okay, so with bromelain. So, and then you talked about seroteptase. Are those all the same thing, but a different way?
So they have different potencies, basically. So the very strongest fibrinolytic that has the very strongest power to break down fibrin and dissolve these blood clots is lumbrokinase. That's your strongest one, and then the next strongest one is nattokinase. Okay. So if we don't have a way to energetically test, and the patient sometimes knows, I will ask them, if you've ever gone and give blood, was it hard for them to draw the blood? And they'll tell me, oh, yes or no. And we can kind of gauge that way if we can't have them in the office and energetically test.
So are you able to help people via Skype or not Skype, Zoom or telemedicine?
We do. We can connect remotely to other people's computers and mail them the hand cradle and do the scanning that way. But we also take phone calls for the virus that we've been speaking about, because I do have a protocol that has worked really well, and so we can address it that way, just over the phone.
Very good. Yeah, because it seems like that some of these viruses are activating mold, and
Yes.
Mold activates Epstein-Barr. Mold can activate other diseases in the body. People have been complaining about exhaustion and listen, I also experienced that as well, and I didn't know that it was the mold that was doing it. I just thought it was the virus that had activated it, but somehow this virus is connected with this mold. I don't know how it's connected. Do you know how the virus is connected to mold reactivation?
No, I don't. I
need to figure that one out.
What we're seeing with this virus that is so interesting, and even with people that have had Epstein-Barr and other viruses that I've worked with, when I test them energetically and I can see that parasitic stress is the greatest thing in their body, we've done a 4-week parasite cleanse and it has resolved their energy issues. I have a patient in another state, and she said, I've been cleaning my house for the first time in years, and my energy has returned just from doing a 4-week parasite cleanse. And pain issues are getting resolved. Joint pain issues are getting resolved. And if I could share a testimony about a long hauler's case, he was just in my office yesterday. He came in, severe fatigue, his oxygen was low, but he is what I would call a world-class athlete. He was going to compete in Greece. It's been about 3 or 4 weeks ago at the Spartan Trifecta Games in Greece. And he found us because we have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. He wanted to start hyperbarics, and it was only less than 2 weeks before he was going to leave. And I told him, I said, really, you need to do 30 consecutive treatments, but I will come in on the weekends and make this available to you, and we'll get as many in before you go. Let's start you on what I do for long haulers, and let's get you going on some antiparasitics. We got him on some products, the enzymes to thin his blood, and some product that has some L-arginine in it. And his oxygen numbers were going up every single day. He would come in, he would bring his phone, he would bring his report, and every day would have a testimony. And then he came in like 3 days into hyperbarics. He said, I've got to tell you, I did my routine, and it normally takes 43 minutes, and I just cut 3 minutes off the time. This is great.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
He won second place in the world in
Wow.
Greece. And then just yesterday, I learned he did another race in Dallas that was called the High Rocks. And that is featured in 11 continents. I mean, I'm sorry, 3 continents and 11 countries. He competed against 8,000 people.
Wow.
In his age bracket, he won first place and he set a world record for the entire.
Wow.
Yes. And he goes, I don't know what we're doing. He said, whatever you're doing is working. He said, I have never felt this good in my life. And he was just going on and on. So we are seeing some amazing things with the long haulers in the protocols that we're doing.
You know, when you give the body what it needs, it responds so lovingly, doesn't it? And so that's what we talk about here in the classroom. What we talk about in the classroom is personal responsibility, taking ownership for our life. And I want to invite you all to come to the I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit that we're going to have in Rockledge, Florida on January 21st, 2023. This is where we're going to come together and we're going to look at how I am the solution for our own body and our own health. And of course, you know, I always say God is in us. So the I am is the God in us. And the solution is the acronym of what it takes to live the life that we desire. And so I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. There'll be a pop-up for that. There's also a pop-up for Dr. Levy. I keep hearing you talk about hydrogen peroxide, and Dr. Levy is doing a workshop it's a virtual workshop for practitioners. And if you are someone who can handle and read their book and understand, you're welcome too. It's going to be at a higher level. We also have the roadmap to health that he did for regular people like me. So there's other options, but we come together to reclaim our life and reclaim it in a natural way. And so go to whenyouneedafriend.com. While you're there, please subscribe. And while you're there, click on all my social media podcasts, whatever you can do to share, to tag, to text, to let everybody know, because we are the 99% and we go above the algorithms, if you know what I mean. So make sure that we do our part, that you do your part and spreading the word. And that's a way that you can help the classroom grow. What I want while you're there, check out my sponsors, Dr. Jennifer Grammett, the pharmacy in Merritt Island. Thank them. Figure out a way that you can support them the way that they're supporting the classroom. I also want you to go to my little Shop Now bag, which is where you will find if you want to get some of the Nutrimetics products. I found out that if you go to nutrimetics.ec, you'll be able to look at the real information, because they're still not suppressing anything in Ecuador. So if you go to Nutrimetics, and again, this is how you spell it, NUTRAMEDIX. If you go to that EC, then you'll be able to see Dr. Cowden's protocols. You'll be able to, and then once you look at all the information, you go back to nutrimetics.com and you purchase it there with code Lilly, LILLY. And until tomorrow, you'll get 35% off Nutrimetics products. So make sure you act right away. I'm not trying to force you. I'm just telling you that tomorrow is the last day. All the people that are doing the M-Cube detox, I already have taken advantage of it. They already know about it. So I'm just sharing it with you so that you can take advantage of it too. So support my sponsors. Go to the Shop Now bag, click the M-Cube detox button, and then you can see all the little partners, all the partners that are helping us and giving discounts and everything. And also in the Shop Now bag, you'll find other products that are Lilly approved. Like, for example, Keep Me Safe Organics. You know, I just want to share that, a lot of the toxicity in your body comes from beauty products, but Keep Me Safe Organics makes a commitment for 0 chemicals, 0 synthetics, and organic, all natural. So check them out, because that's what I wear from head to toe. Also want to make sure that that you become an enrolled student in the classroom. And when you become an enrolled student, you can donate $1 or $1,000 a month or a week or just a one-time thing, whatever you can afford, spirit, mind, and body. You can also, as simple as sharing this, that's another way that you can help the classroom grow. Anything that you can do, we are so grateful for. So today we are talking to Dr. Denise Sammons, ND. She's a naturopathic doctor in Tennessee. You can find her at Sozo Wellness, TN for Tennessee.com. And that's S as in Sam, O as in orange, Z as in zipper, O as in orange, wellness, TN as in Tennessee.com. So I want to thank you so much, Denise, for coming on today and sharing this information that most people just don't know because this information is being suppressed. And so with that in mind, when I share your information, I'm hoping that people can reach out to you, and can they just call your office or send you an email where they can ask you any questions, or maybe they want to become a patient of yours?
On our website, we have an inquiry form that they can fill out if they have a question, and that will come directly to our email. Our email is also listed on the website, or they can call our office as well. And that's also, the number is posted on the website, and we'll be happy to help them in any way that we can.
Okay, so I want to encourage all of you that if you have a question, we're not going to have a big teacher's pet corner or a long teacher's pet corner. So if you have a question, because we went through a lot of information very, very fast, and we're going to take some bite sizes out of here in a little bit. But if you have any questions, type in a queue, write your questions down, and I'll ask your question as soon as I am able to do so. So a lot of the things that I'm experiencing, not personally, I mean, I'm experiencing not just within myself, but sensing in others, is that there is an exterior fear that everything that came wrapped into this virus was cloaked in fear. Can you tap into how you handle this fear when it comes to illness? What is your way of helping your patients manage fear when it comes to managing their health?
Well, there should be no fear in this virus, and that's what I tell people in the beginning. This was so easy to treat when you start early treatment. And I had some really tough cases, Lillian. I mean, you heard that if you're elderly, or you have asthma, or you have lung conditions, and you get this, you're going to die. I mean, I went to a lady's house who was in her late 80s, took my computer, did my Zyto scanning. I made a house call for this lady, and she's like, "Oh, you don't have a mask on. Are you not worried?" And I said, "No, I'm not worried. I'm not worried because I have been boosting my immune system. I'm boosting my immune system." And I said, this is, and I would share with them truth disables lies, and fear comes from lies and deception, and that comes from the enemy, and we know that. So when you can share truth to people, and then you can give testimonies, and that's one thing I would encourage. Even on our Facebook, we have a Facebook site called Sozo Life and Wellness Store. We have all kinds of video testimonies on there. You can hear me stand and say it all day long, and you like, am I making that up? No. Go on our Facebook and listen to these testimonies. Listen to this person share what actually happened to them. But this lady was in her 80s. She had high blood pressure. She had lung issues. She turned around in 3 days. 3 days.
Wow.
We had a patient in the other part of the state. He had just moved here and retired from the Army Special Forces. He was a commander in the Special Forces. He lost 20 or 30% of his lung function 20 years ago in Afghanistan. 30% of his lung function 20 years ago in Afghanistan, working the burn pits. Okay. He was probably the most challenging case that I worked with. And he turned around. He turned around doing the nebulized hydrogen peroxide. His wife, was by his side caretaking for him. He did have to get some oxygen, but we used the same things, the artemisinin and the ticuna, the proteolytic enzymes, the metal binders, because when I tested him, he had metal. And that again, I've seen these really hard cases. I have friends locally that are MDs that are using ivermectin. One lady has treated over 6,000 patients, over 6,000, and no deaths, no hospitalizations. So it is possible to arrest this in its early stages. Don't wait. Don't wait. Go to your practitioner early and get early treatment, because it works, and there's no fear. There should be no fear.
Good. I think that that's great advice. Now, you mentioned that you were fearless because you boost your immune system. Any tips on immune system? What herbs can we use for boosting our immune system?
One thing that we've always done, even prior to 2020, is I've encouraged all my patients to optimize their vitamin D. And I've kept higher margins probably than most doctors, even functional medicine doctors, but I recommend between 80 and 100 nanograms per milliliter. And even if it's a cancer patient, sometimes we'll push them up over 100. And of course, that panics the MD if they're not trained in nutrition. But what I tell people, we always take vitamin D3 with K2, because we want that calcium going into the bones and the teeth, and we don't want it going in the arteries, we don't want it going in the joints, and we don't want it causing kidney stones or gallstones. And that K2 is what directs the calcium. The calcium moves on the D3, but the K2 is what directs it. It's the traffic cop. It's directing it where to go. So we optimize vitamin D, and I recommend in the winter, sometimes we even go up to 10,000 units a day, but a minimum of 5,000 units. And what I tell my patients, this is your maintenance dose from now till Jesus comes back. This is what we want to do. Don't come off of that. Do your proteolytic enzymes. Keep your blood thin. Keep the oxygen going to the cells. Do your zinc. You can, again, I like that liposomal zinc that has the propolis in it, and it has the.
And what brand do you use?
It's a Quicksilver. Quicksilver.
Oh, the liposomal. They're doing liposomal zinc.
Yeah, they have a lot of liposomal products that we work really well. They have a liposomal EDTA that I use a lot in my practice for heavy metal toxicity. And we know that, so many times pathogens go to the brain. You were asking me earlier in the first part of the interview, with neurological disease, what we know is that they have pathogens in the brain. Oftentimes it's spirochetes in the brain. Sometimes it's a fungus, a brain fungus, and sometimes it's parasites.
Yeah.
So those little microscopic worms, that cause MS, that they get in the brain, and you have to get products to cross what we call the blood-brain barrier. So the way to do that is to either find a liposomal herb, a liposomal form of a chelator, or you can mix an herb with DMSO. And DMSO does not taste good. I will tell people that right now, but DMSO will carry and transport things across the blood-brain barrier. So it will get into the brain and it will kill the pathogen in the brain. But you've got to be very careful. Again, we go back to when we take an antiparasitic, you've got to have something else on board to mop up what is being released back into the blood. Because if you've got other pathogens there besides parasites, you don't want to cause further, damage and suppress the immune system. So you want to know what other pathogens you're dealing with and pair those up to mop up what's being released and take care of that.
Great advice. I mean, when you're talking about these things, it's almost like the MQ detox experience. I wish you could join us for the MQ detox experience. And all of you, for those of you who have, that we're on our 10th week. Today is our 10th week that we're going on the MQ detox experience, but you can join us at any time. We've recorded all the classes with Dr. Lee and all our wonderful teachers that have come in as an extra education. We have learned so much. So the things that you're sharing right now is just, it's affirming what we're learning as well. If somebody were to walk in, we've got about 2 minutes left in the class. If somebody were to walk in today and say, what is this show about? What would you say to them?
What is your show about?
Yeah, no. What is this class today about? What are the takeaways that you would like for people to run with?
I want people to know, and this was from the beginning of my practice, from the inception of my practice. I worked with a marketing girl, and she said, if you have one word back in 2012 to describe your practice, what would that be? And I said, hope. I want people to have hope. There is hope for healing. and there is hope for restoration. The word sozo means to heal, restore, and make whole and preserve from danger. That is what that word is. It's a Greek word. It's translated saved in the New Testament, but that's the meaning of sozo. And there is so much that we can do to support our body. Our body was designed to heal. It was designed to heal, and we can heal and restore, and we can use things that God put on this earth. We do not have to use pharmaceutical chemicals. And I am not opposed in an acute situation if somebody needs a pharmaceutical. I do not think they were designed for long-term use, because
Correct.
it affects the liver, it affects the kidneys. And, I always want people to support their liver. And that was one of the things with immune support. When you ask, I would say, do some N-acetylcysteine, do some liposomal glutathione, support your liver, make sure you're having regular bowel movements. If you are not moving toxins out of your body, they're getting reabsorbed. And that's so much of the illness that we see today. Just getting people's digestive system working, and that will be healing in and of itself.
Oh, that's wonderful. That I wish we had longer time for our class today. For those of you who want to learn more, you can find Dr. Denise Sammons, ND, at sozowellnesstn.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Sammons, for sharing your wisdom today. It's very refreshing to hear that we do have the power. We have the power all along. So thank you so much. And for those of you who want to learn more, let's continue to grow together. And please remember, I'll be right here. We'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Denise Sammons wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job.
Yes.
Best ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching today. Do your part. Help us share, tag, text, call people, let them know that there is hope, as Dr. Denise Sammons said today. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye. Thank you again.
Thank you.